She arrives with a smile that radiates peace, but her eyes reveal something else, an unresolved story. You think you're starting something new, but in reality you're being inserted into a script you didn't write, and whose ending was decided long before you entered. Every man who gets involved with a woman over 30, a single mother, needs to understand a fundamental truth. You're not just getting to know a person, you're inheriting an emotional structure in ruins. She has already lived, already cried, already been hurt, and now expects you to heal it all with desire and patience. You believe that persistence is a sign of strength, but in practice, you're just adapting to the neurosis of someone who uses love as anesthesia and the relationship as a form of narcissistic restoration. Freud once said, "What is repressed always returns," and she will unload on you what she should have faced on her own. While you're trying to love the right way, she tests you, punishes you, compares you to ghosts from the past. You're in a symbolic war, but no one told you. And when you finally realize that something is wrong, she flips the script and says the problem is you. But this game isn't only playing out in relationships. Even this channel, this space of clarity, has felt the effects of a greater shift underway. The algorithm doesn't favor those who provoke deep reflection. The system rewards distraction, not clarity. Do you know why? Because we don't sell illusions here. We spark awakening. This space may not remain accessible forever. Not out of drama, but because what we do here disturbs. It unsettles those who profit from other people's confusion. But even if everything disappears tomorrow, what has been understood remains. Once you see, you can't unsee. And once you awaken, you can no longer settle for the old frequency. We will continue through other paths, other formats, other voices. To those who criticize too much, take in what resonates, discard what doesn't. This is not doctrine, it's a battlefield of the mind. And those on the front lines don't have time for sterile debates. They need to act. Stay alert. Chaos loves when you get lost in irrelevant details. And you don't have to agree with everything, but you do need the courage to admit when something is pulling you away from yourself and your true desire. The red flag doesn't want to love you. She wants to use you as an emotional alibi for the failures she never had the courage to face. This channel isn't just mine, it's ours. It belongs to every man who's tired of being blamed for mistakes he didn't make. To every man who realized too late that he was giving himself to something that should never have even begun. It belongs to those who can already see the structure behind the symbolic makeup. If you're here, it's because you're tired too. Tired of being the consolation prize for a woman who has lived long enough to know exactly what she's doing, but still manipulates your desire as if you were the one to blame for everything. The time to awaken is now, and there's no going back. The first psychosis hides in the fantasy of the savior. Every woman over 30, a single mother, carries, on some level, the unconscious hope that a man will appear who understands everything, accepts the full package, and heals with his presence what she never had the courage to confront deeply. But that expectation isn't romantic, it's pathological. She doesn't see you as a man, but as a kind of emotional patch. You become the symbolic remedy she believes she deserves after the trauma. But the trauma is still there, poorly digested, poorly processed, never truly integrated. She asks for patience, but acts with impatience. She demands maturity, but challenges your masculinity with emotional games. She says she doesn't want to repeat mistakes, but turns you into the same emotional experiment that already broke others before you. Only the label changes. The poison is the same. Psychoanalysis is clear. Those who don't process grief repeat the trauma. And she didn't process it. She armored herself, dressed her child as a shield, collected ready-made phrases, and now expects you to climb a wall she built herself, between her and any real form of surrender. You think you're building something, but you're being tested constantly. By the memory of her ex, by the idealized image of what she thinks she deserves, by the persona of strength she created after the collapse. You're not with a woman. You're battling her psyche. She doesn't want a partner. She wants someone who can endure the chaos that even she can't handle, and still smile, pay the bills, tolerate the coldness, praise her strength, and in the end, apologize for not having shown up earlier. As if it were your fault that she wasted her time in the name of freedom. You become the symbolic trophy of a war she lost with herself. And if you don't give her everything she demands, you become the next mistake, the next man who doesn't understand women, who doesn't support single mothers, who's only after sex. All of this just to avoid looking into her own emptiness. And the most terrifying part, she truly believes she's being fair, because this psychic delusion isn't fake, it's structured. It formed layer by layer, from the original frustration, through reckless pleasure all the way to silent despair, which she now calls empowerment. Freud already explained it. The unconscious doesn't lie, it repeats. And you've become the repetition of an old scene, in a play whose ending never changes. She leaves wounded, you leave drained. Because her pain doesn't want to be healed, it wants to be avenged, and you're the emotional scapegoat. You're not saving anyone. You're being swallowed by a script where love has become a debt and the man a function. If you don't open your eyes, you'll pay a heavy price for wounds that aren't even yours. And worse, you'll think this is love. But it's not, it's self-annihilation. The second psychosis hides in another place. The child as the center of desire. A woman over 30, a single mother often without realizing it, shifts the symbolic center of the relationship toward her child. He ceases to be just a child and begins to take the place of the man who failed. This shift isn't conscious, but it structures everything. You think you're entering a relationship, but in reality, you're competing with the deepest bond she has, the symbolic tie with her own son. And in that contest, you'll never win, because she doesn't want you to win. The child becomes what's left of her desire. She protects him with an almost delusional intensity. He is shielded, spoiled, idealized, not out of love, but out of guilt, because deep down she knows he was born from an unresolved desire. Freud said, the unconscious doesn't deal well with mistakes, it tries to compensate. That's exactly what she does. She transfers to the child all the energy that should go to the partner. But since the partner has already been symbolically discarded, now every man represents a threat to the altar she built herself. You approach with care, she calls it invasion. Try to educate, she says you don't understand. Step back, she accuses you of not accepting the full package. What she doesn't reveal is that this package already comes with a manual, rules, boundaries, and one very clear function: to silence you. The man becomes an intruder in the emotional trench, and any attempt you make to assert yourself as presence, authority, or affection, without submitting to the maternal cult, will be punished. Because she doesn't want a partner, she wants a hostage to her idealized motherhood. This structure is perverse. It flips the natural order. The child becomes the man of the house. The partner becomes a temporary guest. And she assumes the role of the solitary heroine, who handles everything on her own, when in truth she uses that narrative to mask her own emotional chaos. In theory, she says she wants a healthy relationship. In practice, she sabotages everything that threatens the symbolic throne she gave her child, not because she loves him too much, but because she doesn't know how to separate motherhood from desire, and that is psychic collapse disguised as instinct. You will be punished for loving too much, for correcting too much, for trying too hard, because none of your actions will be seen as genuine. All of them will be interpreted as threats, not toward the child, but toward the toxic bond she built with him to cover the void left by abandonment and failure. While you're trying to build a family, she's defending a structure, and in that structure you are disposable. She doesn't want to rebuild love. She wants to preserve the altar. And if you don't kneel before it, you will be burned, silently, coldly, inevitably. Third hidden psychosis, repressed sexual guilt. The woman over 30, a single mother, carries within her unconscious a conflict that is rarely acknowledged. A chasm between the pleasure she experienced in the past and the image she tries to uphold in the present. She indulged in pleasure freely, followed her desires without asking for permission, but now she wants to be seen as sacred. This conflict isn't admitted, it's projected. She presents herself as mature, balanced, and ready for something serious, but she carries the symbolic weight of choices that were lived through the body, but never processed by the psyche, and that contaminates everything. Psychoanalysis teaches what is not symbolized returns as a symptom, and her symptom is anger toward the masculine, not openly declared but expressed through demands. The man must pay a high price, not for what he does in the present, but for the past she herself chose. She may say she has no regrets, but her emotional structure screams otherwise, in subtle tests, in outbursts with no clear cause, in disproportionate expectations. Every gesture of yours is evaluated, as if she were unconsciously punishing you for everything she allowed to happen before. You're not seen as a partner, but as a courtroom, and any mistake you make will be used as proof that no man is good enough. Because it's easier to project the guilt onto you than to face the fact that her own desire also came with a cost, and that the freedom she once lived came with a high price. The result? A woman trying to rebuild her image, wanting to be seen as wife material, but constantly betrayed by her own unconscious. She doubts her own worth, so she imposes impossible demands. And in the end, when nothing works out, she can say, "See, no man is worth it." That is the satisfaction of the pre-announced failure. She's not looking for a man. She's looking for absolution. But that absolution can't come from you, because the problem was never the other. The conflict is with herself. And until that is honestly addressed, you will pay emotionally for sins you didn't commit. Every approach you make will be monitored. Every compliment will be tested. Every act of giving will be sabotaged, because the love she seeks isn't real. It's symbolic. She wants to be loved as if she were pure, but she was the one who profaned her own story. The gap between the life she lived and the idealized image is unbearable, so she lies to herself. And that lie becomes the silent axis of the relationship. You must accept everything, without question, and if you dare to touch the wound, you'll be accused of being sexist, cold, or lacking empathy. She wants to start from zero, but insists on carrying all the baggage. She wants a mature love, but with the emotional rules of a wounded teenager, and you, if you're not careful, will be reduced to a crutch, so she can keep walking without ever facing the guilt of having stumbled. Fourth hidden psychosis, control as redemption. The woman over 30, a single mother marked by her emotional fractures and poorly digested choices, develops an unconscious impulse to control every detail of the relationship. She doesn't want to live love. She wants to manage the symbolic risk of being hurt again. This control is not limited to the external world. It's an attempt to silence the internal chaos. She tells you how you must act, how you must speak, how you must feel, how you must even think. Every gesture of yours needs to confirm the narrative she created, to keep standing the little psychic stability she still has left. She demands total transparency, but hides her own ghosts. She wants to know your location, your traumas, your emotional history, but refuses to expose hers. You become the one constantly analyzed, while she remains an untouchable entity, protected by a cloak of victimhood. This is not love. It's structured neurosis. Psychoanalysis shows those who were hurt too much and never symbolize the wound try to avoid repetition by controlling reality. But love cannot be controlled, and that is why she suffers. Because by trying to eliminate every risk, she also eliminates desire. And you end up becoming just a functional puppet, an emotional operator, a name to be used in place of the void she still refuses to face. You cannot make mistakes. One slip-up of yours will be treated as betrayal. A poorly timed joke becomes disrespect. Silence becomes abandonment. A tired day becomes neglect. And so you become an emotional slave to a structure that needs to control everything, to avoid collapsing inside. This control doesn't come from hate, it comes from fear. But it's a fear that is unrecognized. It only projects itself. She lives under paranoid anticipation. She expects the mistake even before it happens. And by expecting it, she provokes it. The mistake becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. She doesn't want a partner. She wants predictability. She wants someone who functions like a safe script, without deviations, without surprises. But you are not predictable. You are a man. You have desire, you have shadow, you have flaws. You are human. And the more human you are, the more she will try to mold you. Because the human reminds her of the past, and the past for her is a trauma that has not yet been processed. You will be emotionally pruned. Your strength will be seen as a threat. Your doubt interpreted as escape. Your frustration treated as selfishness. Because in this script, there is only room for one protagonist, her wounded ego trying to prove, at any cost, that this time it will work out. But love does not grow in soil of fear, and she lives in fear. Fear of surrendering, fear of trusting, fear of repeating, so she tries to control. But control doesn't create connection. it creates imprisonment. And if you don't protect yourself, you will be emotionally imprisoned by a woman who believes she is a jailer, in the name of love. Deep down, all she wants is peace, but she doesn't know how to reach it without trying to eliminate everything that reminds her of chaos. And the masculine reminds her. That's why she tries to suffocate the masculine, hoping it will save her from herself. But in the process, she kills everything. The truth, the affection, the man, the love, the chance for a real life. Fifth hidden psychosis, the pleasure in failure. The woman over 30, a single mother behind every speech of overcoming, carries an unconscious relationship with suffering. She needs it. Needs the pain, the chaos, the frustration, not to heal, but to keep her own psychic narrative alive. She has grown used to being the victim, and that role became her identity. It is in that place of one betrayed, deceived, abandoned, overwhelmed, that she builds what she calls power. But it is not mature power. It is symbolic, the power to make herself irreplaceable through pain. Freud already warned, there is a kind of pleasure extracted from the symptom itself, and that is exactly what happens. She transforms failure into a source of meaning. If everything goes well, she becomes destabilized. If you love with consistency, she grows cold. If you surrender, she tests you. Because real love doesn't feed her, it exposes her. She doesn't want a relationship that works. She wants a story that keeps her relevant to herself. Constant suffering becomes emotional proof that she feels too much, fights too hard, gives too much. But in practice, she never resolves anything. She repeats, dramatizes, sabotages. You will be just the next character in this unconscious soap opera. And the more you try to save, the more she will turn you into the new villain. Because deep down, what she needs is to keep alive the script of the man who wasn't capable. This psychosis is silent but lethal. It hides behind pretty phrases, inspiring speeches, tattoos with deep meanings, and carefully manipulated tears. But the script is always the same. Approach, test, chaos, distance, guilt. And you trapped in it all. She has already failed before, and never processed it. So she needs to repeat the failure. Only now in a controlled way. That's why she chooses good men. So that in the end she can say that not even the good ones are worth it. It is a symbolic revenge against desire, against herself. You think you are being wronged, but in reality you are being used as a symbol, as an argument, as an emotional stepping stone. She needs to prove to the world and to herself that nothing works out, that no one stays, that every man leaves, even when she is the one who pushes them away. This woman doesn't want peace. She wants to keep alive the narrative in which she always plays the role of the one who suffers, because that gives meaning to her existence. Take that away, and she falls apart. That's why she sabotages. That's why she accuses. That's why she destroys everything you try to build with good intentions. If you don't see this, you will be swallowed, because you will keep trying to love someone who only survives in pain. And for her, love is the enemy, because love demands presence, demands truth, demands surrender, and that threatens everything she built with trauma, masks, and self-pity. You tried to love a woman who had already built an altar to suffering. Now you understand why everything you offer seems insufficient, because her desire was never to build something with you. It was to sustain inside herself the same old story, that every love ends the same way. This is not hatred of the feminine, it is masculine clarity. Psychoanalysis offers us lenses, and through them, we see that what many call empowerment is often just repression disguised as choice. It is the repetition of a symptom that refuses to be processed. That's why we are building a community of members, a space where we discuss what is no longer allowed here, on this platform. Without censorship, without frills, without euphemisms. If you want to truly deepen your understanding, join us. Only those who seek remain here. No performative activism, no whining. This channel may fall, but the movement doesn't stop. Take what serves you. Discard what doesn't. There's no savior here. There are soldiers. Soldiers who think, who study, who understand psychic structure. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. The next step is yours.